What is Islam? What is Islam? Do you know? Do you know? It is five principles. It is five principles. Now do you know? Now do you know?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to a new series that we're going to be looking at the youth, on how the youth can be more effective as Muslims in today's society. And often as youth you might be sitting at home thinking to yourself that, well, how do I really make a difference as a Muslim? And there's so many temptations that are going to be pulling me to the left or to the right, things that will distract me from what I'm actually supposed to be doing. And it's very difficult for youth to be real ambassadors for Islam. So today, the program that we are going to be doing, inshallah, is Youth Ambassadors for Islam. And many of you might have an understanding, maybe a little bit of an understanding of what an ambassador does for a job. As a youth, you have the privilege of being an ambassador for Islam. And when we hear that, then when you hear me say, well, you're going to be an ambassador for Islam, what do you understand by that word, ambassador? Many of you have perhaps watched the news on television and seen that an ambassador was sent from perhaps India or Burma or from America to another country where they worked, and they were representatives of their country in that other foreign place that they were sent to. But you get good and bad ambassadors in life. And you'll often hear that many of the ambassadors are recalled or called back because they were not very good representations of what they should be for the country that they came from. And then you have other ambassadors who people didn't expect much from, but later became well known and became famous ambassadors. So this is more or less what an ambassador does. He can either represent his country or his people in a negative way or in a positive way. And in the same way, you as Muslim youth have the opportunity to represent Islam in a positive or a negative way. One of the secrets of being a good ambassador is to speak a lot about the little you know and a little about the lot that you don't know. Maybe I should break that down for you a little bit. As youth, if you only know a little bit about Islam, then that's all you talk about. Don't start giving fatwas and laws and regulations and rulings on things that you don't understand. Not that we think that you do not have the capability of understanding those things in the future, but for now, only speak about the things that you do know. So if all you know about is how to pray 5 times a day, then that is all you teach to somebody if they want to know about Islam as an ambassador for Islam. So don't get into discussions that perhaps you don't have any knowledge of and can cause arguments, can cause dissension, and could actually in the long run be a disservice to Islam. So speak a lot about the little that you know and speak a little about the lot that you do not know. So as youth, you have the privilege of being an ambassador for Islam. You need to learn one new thing every day as an ambassador that you can impart onto other people that you meet in life. When a person is sent from one country to another as an ambassador, he doesn't just sit there in his office chair like I'm sitting here and all day long just, well, I'm just going to regurgitate the same old things that my government did 20 years or 30 years ago. No, he has to be on the ball on what is going on in his country all the time. So every day he will perhaps be phoning his country and asking them what new developments are taking place, what new changes are taking place. I don't want to be embarrassed when the press or the media come and ask me a question and I don't know how to answer it. In the same way, as a Muslim youth, you need to learn one new thing every day and keep a diary of what you have learned. Something that is quite disappointing to see is that often we have guests coming to our local masjid, our local mosque, our local place of worship, and we don't see the youth standing there with a pen and paper or a little notebook writing notes of what they are learning during that visit from that sheikh that might be coming to the mosque or to our local community hall. And we lose all those gems, all those precious insights. Now, we're only going to remember maybe one or two of the insights, but we're going to miss all the rest. So it's very, very important to keep a journal or a diary, and keep those diaries or those journals so that you are able to reflect on them at a later stage. Perhaps today you would have written, speak a lot, or should I say the other way around, speak a little of the lot that you don't know, but a lot of the little that you do know. Something you can write down and maybe use it later in your life. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, if I start keeping a journal and I start writing these notes down, people in my school are going to probably think I'm a little bit emo, too emotional, having to write down everything all the time. But don't worry about what people say. Worry about what Allah will say on the day of judgment when He asks you, what about all those people that are sent in your way that you could have learned from, and yet you put nothing that you learned from them into practice? Not practicing what you preach is wrong at the highest level. So we're not asking you to be an artificial ambassador or a fake ambassador. You must believe in what you are being an ambassador for as a Muslim youth. So if you're a fake, people will get that very quickly. They'll realize this person's not genuine. He's not really being who he is supposed to be. And so they will see right through you. So you have to practice what you preach. And if you don't practice what you preach, people will not have confidence in you, whether you're young or old, whether you are intelligent, whether you are a sports person. How many people have we seen, they will say, well, we are against, doping during sports events. And later, 2 or 3 years later, these same people that were so against doping for sports events are the same people that are caught for these things. So we don't want to be like that. We don't want to be fake in what we're doing. We want to be genuine. Don't be a hypocrite either. Once people figure you out and they figure out that you actually are a hypocrite, you have lost all credibility with them. My father used to have a saying, and he said that it takes you your whole life to create a name. It takes you 5 minutes to lose it. Once you have lost your name, once you have lost your credibility, people find it very, very difficult to trust you again in the future. This is why the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was so successful as a young man, because he was called the trustworthy, the one that they could believe in or trust with their secrets, with their business practices. And this is why we find also throughout the Quran, and even the stories that we hear of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his wives, may Allah be pleased with them all, how all of them had only good things to say about him. During that time, there would have been somebody writing something negative about him. They would have loved to have recorded something negative about him, yet we don't find that, because this man was the trustworthy. This prophet of Allah was the trustworthy one. He could be counted on in times when other people could not be counted on. He could be counted on when people would leave or depart or run away from the truth, yet he stuck to the truth. Even when we look at the life of the Prophet Isa, peace be upon him, that we find recorded in the pages of the Bible, we find that all his disciples abandoned him. Every single last disciple, even though they had been following, because they were not genuine. When one of the events that takes place in the New Testament, which we'll be dealing with in a series called The Cross Question on the same channel on Peace TV, inshallah, we look at one of the incidents where the Prophet Isa, peace be upon him, is talking to his disciples and they all run away. They all desert him and he's left alone. Yet he was there to be an ambassador for Allah. Every single prophet was sent to mankind as an ambassador to represent the truth to mankind. Now, we have that opportunity as Muslim youth to be ambassadors for Islam. We're either going to be good ones or bad ones. And we need to emulate the prophets. We need to look at the role models that we have been given, even in those first few centuries of Islam. And we look at those great leaders of Islam, how they had that strength. And that many of them were young men. Many of them were in their teens still, that were great ambassadors for Islam. Today we have Islam as it is because of those men and those young women who had that strength of character to say no when temptations came their way. So inshallah, we will be those type of people. Now, perhaps you thinking, well, how can I be ambassador for Islam? The people that are in my class, the people that are in my college, the people that are at university with me, perhaps you're a young man moving into the workplace for the first time, and you're thinking, well, people are on drugs, they're drinking alcohol, they're smoking cigarettes, they're womanizing. How can I be an ambassador to these people? Because I don't drink and I don't smoke and I don't womanize and I don't take drugs. They're going to just think, well, why is this little goody two-shoes trying to come and tell us what to do, try to change us? And they're going to perhaps mock you or reject you. Well, this is not true. You'll find that many times they are actually envious of you. They look at you and they think, if I could have a life like he has. He seems so happy. There is nur on his face. There is a peace that you can see in every part of his character and his body. Even before I became a Muslim, before I found truth and submitted to the will of Allah, there was no happiness in that lifestyle. The reason that people took drugs or drank alcohol or womanized is because they couldn't find that peace, that real, genuine peace. And as you'll find many, many young people throughout the world, like I did when I was 16 years old, I started to look at all the different religions, trying to find some peace, some rest, and I could not find it. When I looked into the different sects within Christianity, I could not find it. When I looked into Krishna consciousness, I could not find it. When I looked into atheism or agnosticism, I could not find it. But when I eventually, after a 10 or 15 years of searching, going from one place to the next, looked into Islam, I found a peace that you do not find in Christianity. A peace that you find that really gives you that peace of mind that people write about, talk about, write books about. Islam is simple. Islam is a religion that brings you, as a young person, hope for the future. Well, I think it's time for us to take a break, and when we get back from the break, we'll continue, inshallah.
What is Islam? Muhammad, peace be
Pearls of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Abu Huraira, may Allah be pleased with him, reported Allah's messenger, may peace be upon him, as saying, do you know who is poor? They, the companions of the Holy Prophet, said, a poor man amongst us is one who has neither dirham with him nor wealth. He, the Holy Prophet, may peace be upon him, said, the poor of my ummah would be he who would come on the day of resurrection with prayers and fasts and zakat, but he would find himself bankrupt on that day, as he would have exhausted his funds of virtues, since he hurled abuses upon others, brought calumny against others, and unlawfully consumed the wealth of others, and shed the blood of others, and beat others, and his virtues would be credited to the account of one who suffered at his hand. And if his good deeds fall short to clear the account, then his sins would be entered in his account, and he would be thrown in the hell-fire. Sahih Muslim, Volume 4, Book of Piety, Hadith number 6251.
Most countries of the world ban bullying. They fight it in their schools and universities. A lot of us are being bullied differently every single day. Some come up to us and say, do this, while others say, don't you dare. Some say this is halal, while others say, nope, this is haram. Are you confused? Do you feel lost? Join me in Umdat al-Ahkam, where with the grace of Allah, we will learn the proper knowledge from the Quran and from the Sunnah, which would help stop this kind of bullying.
Join Asim Al-Hakim in Umdatul Ahkam, next on Peace TV.
What is Islam?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back. Today we are talking about youth ambassadors for Islam, and how you at home, who's sitting there perhaps thinking, well, there's nothing I can do for Islam. I mean, I'm not the brightest kid in my class. I'm not the most popular girl in my school or college. What can I possibly do as an ambassador? The wonderful thing about Islam is that Allah uses every single person. You know, when I became a Muslim, it wasn't through some great scholar sitting in some great Islamic educational center or institution. It was through a simple person selling food, a birdseed in a pet shop. I know people who became Muslims through the person who is selling them linen or materials. They go to the shop there and that person did dawah to them. I know many people that in high school they became Muslims through somebody in their classroom. So it is up to you as an individual to be an ambassador. Don't wait and rely on big, massive organizations to do the work. They have work to do, but they're doing work on a different level. And so it's up to you as a youth ambassador for Islam to make the difference in our society today. What we were speaking about before the break is that many times you might feel that you're not good enough. I mean, you don't have experience in alcohol abuse or drug abuse or things like that. You've grown up in a relatively protected environment and family. Why would people possibly listen to you? And I said that they will listen to you because they are secretly wanting that peace that you have. Perhaps you're the other type of Muslim. Maybe the Muslim that people pretend don't exist in the Muslim world today. Maybe you're one of those Muslims who secretly goes out and does all these things that I spoke about. Maybe on a Friday evening when you tell your parents you're going to your friend's house, you're actually secretly going off to a nightclub and dancing and doing all sorts of other things. And you're afraid that anyone will catch you or find you. So you have an alter ego. You have a disguise that you put on, different clothing that you have when you're amongst Muslims. You too have a story to tell. You too can still be a Muslim ambassador, an ambassador for Islam. You may not be the greatest ambassador, but by being an ambassador and telling people about your religion, it will help fix up your own problems. Now, how will that work? You might think, well, how's that possible? I mean, I'm the worst Muslim you can find. Why would anybody want to be a Muslim? Didn't you say that I mustn't be fake? Didn't you say that I mustn't be a hypocrite? Think about this for a moment. If you're a bad Muslim and you're doing wrong, and somebody comes up and says, aren't you a Muslim? And you say yes, and they say, well, tell me about your religion. And you start telling them about Islam and how Allah is the one and only, how He's all-sufficient, that He has no partners, that He has no brothers or sisters. What do you think begins to happen in your own heart and your own mind at that time? You start to feel guilty. You start to feel ashamed that you're not living the life that you're telling people about. And by doing that, you will slowly start to clean your own life out. And you start to realize that this is what I need to change in my life. I have met many brothers and sisters who are now well-known scholars throughout the world. Many scholars in my own country who are in great demand throughout the world. Who were those people? Who a couple of years back, maybe 20 years ago, not even 20 years ago, 12 years ago, were those people who were being hypocrites, who were deceiving people, who were going to nightclubs at night instead of going to learn the Quran. And now, by doing that little bit of dawah, their lives changed and they realized, what am I doing with my life? And they went and they changed their life. There are some youngsters that I met in my own country, young men, not children, young men, who said to me they would really like to be practicing Muslims, but they just found Islam, they find Islam boring. They find that Islam doesn't offer them that which they thought they would find in Islam. And my simple answer to them is, what Islam have you got? If you have an Islam that makes you feel that it's boring, that doesn't apply to your life today, perhaps you need to change the group that you're hanging around with. Perhaps you need to try and look for those Muslims who behave the way that the Quran teaches them to behave. So you need to look, if you're unhappy or unsatisfied with the Muslim society, and change it. You're not like the Christians which are born into the Baptist church or the Methodist church or the Catholic church or the Anglican church. If you're unsatisfied with the group that you're with, go to the mosque down the lane. Go to the mosque across the street and try that one. Perhaps that group are practicing Islam properly. If you hang around Muslims that are bad for you, then you'll be a bad Muslim. If you hang around Muslims that are good for you, then you'll become, inshallah, a good Muslim. Always choose friends that are cleverer than you. Always choose Muslims that have more knowledge than you. It's pointless being in a friendship circle with people who know less than you, because then you are going to dumb yourself down. But if you hang around people that are more intelligent than you, then you will make yourself more intelligent. And the same way with Muslims. Hang around or be with friends who are smarter than you. If you have a friend in your group who is a Hafiz of the Quran, that's the guy that you must invite into your group, or the sister there, if your sister's, to invite into the group. You want to be around people that are going to help you. In school, I remember having a friend who was in school with me. He had a photographic memory. That means he would look at something once and he would remember it. He didn't have to ever go back and read it again. And he was my best friend because he set the marking for me to follow in school. If he got 70%, my idea was to get 75%. And to tell you the truth, I never ever beat him in anything, but I tried all the time to beat him. He was my role model. He set the benchmark that I wanted to attain in my career in school. And I missed him greatly when I finished school because he was the person I always had in front of me to try to get to. Not that I ever did, but it's the attempt that you still do to try to be the best or to be as good as that person is. So in Islam, as youth ambassadors, make sure that you have in your friendship circle those people that will help you to be a better Muslim and a better youth as a Muslim. Read up on as many topics as you can. This is very, very important. Again, when I think back of my own youth, I grew up in a very, very small Muslim community. In fact, there were no Muslims in that community where I grew up. It's a small little town in South Africa called Dundee. And it's probably a few hundred people lived there when I grew up as a youth. But we had a library where we had books. And every week I would go to that library and I would check out 4 or 5 books on all different topics. Books on pottery, how to make pottery, with clay. I'd take books on science, things that we weren't learning at school, because I wanted to have extra knowledge so that it would benefit me in the future. Today, if something goes wrong in my house, I don't phone a plumber or electrician or a mechanic. I have learned how to fix those things myself. Gaining knowledge will help you not only to save money, but it will also help you to be able to open up conversations with people. On the way to India, when I was flying from South Africa, I had the opportunity to speak to 4 people. One when I was waiting to get onto the airplane in South Africa, one when I got on the plane, one when I got off the plane, the connecting flight, and then getting into India itself. 4 opportunities to talk to 4 different groups of people. They were all totally different to each other. They didn't have any common ground. They weren't Muslims. They were just normal human beings. But they couldn't have been different if I tried. One was in IT, one was adventure person. He had done skydiving and abseiling, so he was into all these adventure sports. The other one was somebody who I don't know what he did because he was so drunk when I spoke to him, I don't actually know what he did for a living. But they were all different. Unless you have an understanding of a wide variety of topics, it becomes very difficult to find a common ground, a commonality when speaking to people. So this is why you should try to learn at least one new thing every single day and to gain as much as you can on many different topics as you can. Now, you'll often have seen with politicians that go out on the campaign trail or ambassadors that give talks from different countries. They always have a smile on their face when they're talking. Even if the journalist or the person who is doing the interview with them asks them a question that might be embarrassing. And so you'll find them feeling maybe a little bit embarrassed when the question comes, but they've always got a smile on their face. Even if they are being accused of embezzling money, or the fact that they are supporting a bad regime in their country, or perhaps are involved in some scandal of some sort that we often find people involved with today, they always have a smile on their face. And there's a secret to this. A smile is contagious. We often think that yawning, when somebody yawns, I won't do it now because I won't do that to you guys at home. But if somebody yawns, you all want to yawn. But smiling is far more contagious than that. So as an ambassador,